The Force, in its mysterious wisdom, moved destinies without anyone noticing. Even before she conceived Anakin, Shmi Skywalker was free and had a vision, or was it an instinct, deep and inexplicable, that made her abandon everything? She didn't know why or how, but she trusted. She abandoned Corellia and, in an improbable sequence of events and chance, a malfunctioning transport pod landed on the right planet, the forest moon of Endor. There, lost among the titanic trees, Shmi met the inhabitants who would change everything. The Ewoks, creatures of pure heart and innocent courage, welcomed her like one of their living legends, a lady fallen from the stars. She cared for them tenderly, learning their simple language and their communal way of life. It was like an old tale, the woman from the stars and the little guardians of the forest. When she discovered she was carrying a child, she wasn't frightened. She knew that the universe was guiding her with invisible hands. "It will be a child of the forest," she said, "and it will be free." The Ewoks gathered around him like brothers, dancing around the fire on moonlit nights, protecting him with their spears and guttural songs. Anakin was born on a golden evening, the branches drooping as if to greet the new breath of the Force. The Ewoks celebrated for 7 days, painting rocks, building wooden dolls, and sewing colorful cloaks in his honor. For Shmi, the pain of childbirth was light, as if the trees were cradling him. "He is pure light," she thought, as she looked into her son's eyes. "But it's a light that carries something greater, something I don't understand yet." And even without knowing it, she named him after a word that had come to her in her dreams. Anakin. Growing up among the Ewoks, Anakin moved through the treetops like a natural extension of them. His feet were light, his balance precise. He almost seemed to float. It was as if the planet was talking to him, trunks warning of his fragility, branches gently yielding to his leaps. He felt part of something he couldn't see, but which accompanied him. "Why do I know where to step before I step?" he thought. "Why do others run and I just know where to go?" There were no answers, but he didn't question too much. He just went with the flow. At the base of a nearby ravine, hidden by the constant morning mist, there was something strange. A graveyard of technology, the remains of probes, old ships, and fragments of droids. The Ewoks didn't like going there. They said the spirits of the machines didn't sleep well. But Anakin, he loved it. He would scale the wreckage, open compartments, join pieces without knowing exactly why. "If I connect this here and solder it with this wire, that's it," he said, his eyes shining. "But I don't even know what that is." Shmi watched from afar, frightened and proud. The Ewoks called him the son of the spark because sometimes, when he touched devices, they would start working again even without power. "He speaks to the metals," said Paplu, one of the elders, "and the metals listen." Anakin, curious, took everything apart. Old robots, damaged generators, broken weapons. He didn't know their names, but he understood their purposes. One night, he built a small droid that carried fruit for the Ewoks. What's your name again?" he thought out loud. "Maybe, B1? No, you look like a Gaigo." And Gaigo became the village mascot. Even as a child, Anakin was different. When a branch broke, he knew seconds before. When an Ewok got lost in the woods, he would stretch out his hand and point. There it is." Shmi noticed that he would often close his eyes and say, "I hear the heart of things." It wasn't madness, it was the Force. But without a name, without a master, it manifested itself as it could, in dreams, sensations, feelings. And Anakin wasn't afraid. He ran into the wind, climbed the tallest trees, sat alone to talk to the silence. At night, while the Ewoks sang and beat their drums, Anakin would lie on top of the main platform, gazing at the stars. "Up there, there's more. There are more people. There's more," he whispered. "I can feel them. They're calling." Shmi stayed by his side, always calm. She too dreamed of a life beyond the trees, but feared that by leaving Endor, all that, the harmony, the purity, the simplicity, would be lost. Even so, fate, the Force, was already beginning to shape the child's next move. Time passed. He built, he dismantled, he dreamed. But more and more, the dreams became visions. He saw ships, he saw swords of light, he saw wars on distant planets. "That's not childish," said Shmi, worried. But she knew she couldn't stop what was coming. The Force had put Anakin there for a reason, and soon, very soon, someone would come from the galaxy to discover that secret hidden among the branches of Endor. Anakin began to hear the Force more clearly when he turned 15. Before, it was just an instinct. But that night, sitting on a moss-covered rock, he heard a voice that didn't sound like the forest. It wasn't an Ewok, nor was it the echo of the trees. It was an old but serene man, speaking to him as if he already knew him. "Anakin," said the voice, "you are ready." The boy didn't know if it was a dream. "Who are you?" he asked. "I was known as Master Virgil, and now I'm part of the Force." Over the next few days, the figure began to appear, sometimes in the water of the lake, sometimes in the shadows of the leaves. Master Virgil watched him, instructed him, guided his movements. "The Force is alive, boy. It has a will of its own. Listen to it." Anakin trained alone, but he was not alone. Every gesture, every step, every thought was corrected, guided, shaped by that presence. When he lifted stones, he felt the flow. When he ran, he saw the ground before his feet. "The Force is not just power," said Master Virgil. "It is balance." Later, another figure appeared, Master Dante, with a firm gaze and a deep voice. "You have raw power, boy, but you'll need discipline." It was from him that he learned to channel the rays of the Force. It was like taming storms with his hands. "Concentrate. Anger is not the way. Control is." Lightning exploded against trees, sparking in Anakin's hands. Sometimes he missed and the power came back at him. But Master Dante would appear and say, "Stand up. You are made of something greater than failure." Time passed and another master came, a silent warrior with blue eyes and light steps. He said his name was Master Wu. He taught the ways of fighting. Each blow has a flow. The sword is an extension of the intention. Anakin practiced with a stick made of old metal, while he watched Master Wu perform impossible movements in the air. "Don't fight to win," said the Master. "Fight to protect." The Ewoks watched, fascinated. As the boy spun, jumped and dodged as if dancing with the wind, Anakin absorbed everything, like a sponge. Later, another spirit appeared, a wise master with an ancient voice. He wouldn't give his name, but Anakin called him the Old Man of Light. It was he who taught the boy to see beyond time and space. The past, the future. Everything is now if you know how to look. Anakin meditated in silence for hours. He would sit among the giant roots of Endor, let his eyes close and see places he had never visited. Jedi temples, wars, other masters, other choices. "You have many paths, but only one is yours," said the old man. Anakin never knew his name, but the old man once told him that he was the first thinking living being to become a Jedi. Guided by these presences, Anakin grew up as a force of nature. His mastery of the Force was almost self-taught, but every step was as if he had 1,000 teachers around him. It was the flow of the Force itself that shaped him. And then, one stormy day, as he searched the wreckage for new inventions, he found something. An old crystal, covered in dust and black sand. "Kyber," he whispered, not knowing how he knew. He built his own lightsaber from improvised parts, using fragments of probes and a metal hilt that he adapted. The saber had a vibrating blade like contained thunder, and with it, Anakin created small droids, an army of companions. They were simple. Some flew, others helped the Ewoks carry fruit, one even learned to play the drum. But they were all connected to him. And the strangest thing, many of these droids only worked when he was present. "They don't take orders from anyone but you," said Shmi. "Why is that?" He only replied, "They know who I am." Years later, Anakin could lift entire trees out of the ground using Force alone. He could move rivers, deflect rocks in midair, jump from one canopy to another effortlessly. And sometimes, when he wanted something badly enough, reality would bend. Once, lightning struck near the village. He raised his hand and redirected it. "The Force hears me," he said, "but it also speaks to me." Shmi watched him from afar, torn between pride and fear. "He's more than a son," she thought. "It's as if the galaxy has put something inside him, something I can't contain." The manifestations of the Force increased. Sometimes they took physical forms. A figure walking in the mist, a woman of light who embraced him when he slept, a golden creature who spoke to him in riddles. But most of the time, it was just that absurd intuition, as if he knew everything he needed before it happened. As if the universe had already told me everything, just not all at once. The Force was his father, his master, his own reflection. At the end of those years, Anakin was no longer just a boy. He was something rare, something impossible. A Jedi, without ever having been to a Jedi temple. A warrior, without having been to war. A chosen one, without knowing what exactly he would choose. He sensed that someone would be looking for him soon, that his story, hitherto isolated in the forests of Endor, was about to be discovered. And the Force whispered, "Soon, it will be time to leave." At the age of 20, his body was strong, his mind was agile, and his connection with the Force was unparalleled. One day, as the sun hid behind the treetops, he approached his mother with a calm and determined look on his face. "Mom," he said, "the time has come. The Force is calling me." Shmi felt her heart squeeze, but she knew that this moment had been coming since the day he was born. "You have to go, don't you?" she asked with tears in her eyes. "Yes," he replied, "but I'm not going alone. The Force is with me. It always has been." He hugged her for a long time, and, in that silent farewell, there was no fear, only destiny. Then, with the help of the droids he had created himself and the parts he had accumulated over the years, Anakin completed his personal ship. It was fast, strong, and unlike any model in the galaxy. "It will take me where I need to be," he whispered before taking off. As he crossed the skies of Endor, the Force whispered, not like before, but now in silent cries, warnings of a growing war. He saw in his mind planets burning, voices crying out for help, and the rise of a powerful evil, Count Dooku. "There is a disturbance," said the Force. "The Jedi are divided. The galaxy needs balance." Anakin understood. His birth was no accident. He wasn't just a prodigy, he was the answer. Meanwhile, the Jedi generals were gathering on Geonosis, on a desperate mission to rescue Obi-Wan and stop the Separatist advance. But they were being hunted, surrounded by droids and forces led by Count Dooku himself. Anakin arrived on the planet amid the chaos. His ship cut through the skies of Geonosis like a comet, and as he descended, he was already wielding his lightsaber. It was as if the battlefield recognized him. "I came for this," he said. "This is the moment I was shaped for." Obi-Wan was the first to face him, but fell after a brutal battle. Count Dooku took advantage of his enemy's weakness and cut off Obi-Wan's arm before throwing him with extreme force against the stone walls. Mace Windu tried to protect his fellow Jedi while everyone was fighting outside, but Dooku's Force lightning struck him down before his second move. Yoda, guided by the Force, set off for the site, but he wouldn't make it in time. Evil was rising, but then the winds changed. Before Dooku could kill the two Jedis, Anakin emerged from among the wreckage, his eyes glowing with pure energy. He didn't hesitate. He leapt over the rocks, dodged the energy blasts with supernatural fluidity, and fell before Dooku like judgment incarnate. The duel was fierce but brief. Anakin didn't fight in anger, but with purpose. His blows were quick, precise, guided by something greater than himself. Dooku sneered at first, but soon fell silent. Anakin dodged the lightning, absorbed the energy, and returned it with twice the force. In the final blow, he disarmed the Count and pierced his chest with the blue blade of his saber. The old man screamed, and the galaxy seemed to fall silent for a moment. The battlefield fell silent. The Jedi who were still alive looked at the young man whom no one knew. He didn't wear the traditional robes, He didn't wear the symbols of the Order. But there was something about him that left them in awe. "Who are you?" asked Obi-Wan. "Anakin," he replied, putting his saber away. "Anakin Skywalker." Mace Windu, wounded, approached and simply said, "You're different, we thank you for your help, but I didn't think you'd get out of print that easily either." Anakin nodded. "The Force brought me here, and it's not finished with me yet." The Jedi, used to dealing with Padawans trained from a young age, didn't know what to make of the man. He seemed like a specter of fate, a figure out of ancient legends. Even Yoda, when he arrived, was silent in front of him and then asked questions, but soon nodded to his colleagues that he should be treated as an ally in times of need, but they should also be on the lookout for any instability. The victory at Geonosis was attributed to the divine intervention of a mysterious warrior. Rumors about the Son of the Force began to circulate among the Jedi and in the Senate. Meanwhile, Anakin did not join the Order. He preferred to remain on the sidelines, observing, helping out where necessary, but not bound by dogma. He said, "I wasn't created to follow paths. I was created to open up new ones." The Force, silent and present, guided him, and the next step was approaching. The balance had not yet been restored. The war had only just begun. But for the first time in a long time, the galaxy had hope. And that hope had a name. Anakin Skywalker, the warrior who had come out of nowhere. The man who defeated Count Dooku single-handedly. The child who had grown up with the Force as his father. After the battle on Geonosis, Anakin remembered Dooku's inert body without fully understanding what he had done. He had already fought, trained with robots, faced wild creatures and overcome Force challenges, but he had never taken a human life. As much as that man was a traitor and the cause of war, he was still a living being. The Force pulsed differently around him. Dense, heavy, sad. "I killed," he whispered. "Now what?" During the flight back to Coruscant, Anakin remained absolutely silent. Not even the droids on board dared to ask questions. Nor did the Force speak as before. But inside his mind, the echoes of the masters who had trained him in that invisible dimension came back to him. "Death is sometimes a necessary step," said the voice of one of the old masters. Another added, "But never stop feeling. Feeling is what differentiates you from evil." Anakin clutched his saber in his hands, trying to understand. Arriving at the Jedi Temple, he was greeted with respect, but also with caution. Many masters looked at him suspiciously. "He doesn't belong to the Order," some said. "But he won where we failed," said others. Anakin walked among them with serenity. He had no pride, no vanity, just presence. The Jedi Council called him in for a talk. There were Yoda, Windu, Ki-Adi-Mundi, Obi-Wan, and others. The initial silence was broken by Yoda. "Great deed you have accomplished, but internal balance you must maintain." Skywalker explained his feelings. He didn't hide his anguish, nor did he try to justify his actions. He said he acted on the Force, not on impulse. And when he spoke, everyone listened. It was as if every word was channeled from something greater. "I'm not a Jedi," he said, "and maybe I never will be, but I am part of the Force, and it has taken me where I need to go." The Council agreed that he was too old to be initiated, but they recognized that the Force acted with him in a unique way. So they gave him permission to keep his saber, continue training on his own, and, if he wished, help with future missions. It would be an exception, but the galaxy was already full of exceptions. Anakin became something rare, a Jedi without being a Jedi, a wanderer of the Force, a warrior who didn't obey dogma, but respected balance. And although some feared this freedom, others saw it as a hope of renewal for the rigid order. The next few weeks were spent observing and learning. Anakin strolled the corridors of the Jedi Temple, studied the ancient holocrons, and meditated in the Chamber of the Force. The young Padawans looked at him with admiration, and some masters began to consult him in their lessons. He didn't wear traditional clothes or follow protocols. And yet, it was as if the Force was more alive in him than in many others. Over time, the Jedi began to informally call him the Grey Guardian. Missions began to appear, Disturbances on outer planets, emerging threats, dangerous alliances. Anakin volunteered for them all, even when he wasn't invited. He always showed up first, resolved the situation, and disappeared again. He never demanded recognition. He just did what he felt was right, but his only fault was that he overreacted when he felt he had been underestimated or when others tried to use him. The Council began to accept him as a useful, if unpredictable, tool. In combat, his presence was almost mystical. And soon the rumor spread, where Skywalker goes, the scales shift. But it wasn't all lights and victories. At night, alone, Anakin still heard Count Dooku's voice in his dreams. "You are like me," said the dead man. "The power you have, one day it will consume you." It was a silent burden, but Anakin carried it. He trusted in the Force, yes, but he knew that the line between good and evil could be thin, almost invisible. That's why he trained constantly, not to defeat enemies, but to stay awake, because he knew that the next fall could come from within. And while the Jedi tried to understand this new force that walked among them, other eyes were watching. In the dark corridors of the Galactic Senate, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine was watching the recording of the Battle of Geonosis on a holographic screen. He saw the exact moment when Skywalker disarmed Dooku. He saw the saber pierce the Count's chest. And there, in that instant, his eyes lit up with an almost sick interest. "This boy is different," he muttered. "That is my next project." Palpatine wasn't just interested in his battle prowess, but in the depth of the Force in Anakin. He wasn't trained, he wasn't molded by the rigidity of the Jedi. He was pure, instinctive, full of raw potential, perfect to be sculpted. "The Force is powerful in this boy," thought the Chancellor. "Too powerful to be left to chance." And so, in the dark heart of the Republic, a new plot was born, an obsession, plan. The Sith's gaze was now fixed on Skywalker, and he would not look away. Dooku's death had left a void at Palpatine's side. The Chancellor, now more powerful than ever, knew he needed another right-hand man, someone younger, more malleable, more intense. Ever since Geonosis, his eyes had been fixed on Anakin Skywalker. It started with invitations to private meetings, then ceremonial dinners, public praise. "You have a glow that those old Jedi lack," he would say, in an almost paternal tone. Anakin, cautious, listened but didn't reply. Obi-Wan soon noticed how often Palpatine approached the new Force prospect. He tried to warn him subtly. "He's a politician, Anakin. He never offers you anything without wanting something in return." But Skywalker just shook his head. At least he's not afraid to speak his mind. The years went by, and the Chancellor's influence grew while the Jedi became increasingly divided between war and bureaucracy. The war against the Separatists continued, and Anakin was always the first on the front line. Without Dooku to fake a kidnapping, Palpatine went behind the scenes, manipulating Separatist leaders directly. But one by one, they fell before Anakin's saber. It was almost symbolic. For every shadow created by Palpatine, Skywalker was the light that extinguished it. This was beginning to annoy the Chancellor, but at the same time it attracted him even more. "If he can defeat all my enemies without even knowing it, imagine being on my side," he thought. It was only a matter of time before he made his proposal. One day, he summoned Anakin to his private chamber. The tone was different, more intimate. "Skywalker," said Palpatine in a seductive voice, "there are secrets that the Jedi will never tell you. They are afraid of your power. I'm not." Anakin looked at him suspiciously. The Chancellor walked over to him. "I can teach you things that no one in this temple dares to teach you. I can give you control over death, pain, the Force itself. And do you know why? Because you're like me. You feel. You're real." Anakin crossed his arms. "Go on." Palpatine smiled. "My real name is Darth Sidious, and I want you by my side. No more wars where you are sent as a tool. With me, you will be master of your own destiny. The universe at your feet. All the pain you've suffered, all that you've lost, I can give back. Come with me, Anakin. Become my apprentice." The silence lasted seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. Palpatine thought he had convinced him. He barely noticed the saber being activated. The cut was clean, instantaneous. Palpatine's head fell like a statue that had lost its top. Anakin stood still, staring at the blue blade still vibrating in his hand. "Did you think you could use me?" he whispered with a hint of anger. "Did you think I was your plaything?" Instead of fleeing, Anakin picked up the body and took it straight to the Jedi Temple. In the council chamber, he threw the Chancellor's head on the floor like a trophy. The Sith Lord was among us all along, and now he's dead. The shock was absolute. Some masters stood up in horror. Others paled. "You killed the Chancellor of the Republic," shouted Mace Windu. "You didn't even consult the council. That was murder, not justice." Yoda frowned in silence. Anakin just crossed his arms. "He tried to corrupt me. He offered me everything, thinking I'd agree to kneel. I killed him because he underestimated me." His voice was calm, but the origin of the act was clear. The room plunged into heated debate. "This man is a danger," said Ki-Adi-Mundi. "He acts on impulse, on emotion." "What if that was just the beginning?" asked Plo Koon. But before the discussion turned into a trial, Obi-Wan stood up. "I've known him as long as you have, but I don't think he killed for justice, it's true. But he didn't become a Sith either. He acted out of ego, pride perhaps. And that can be corrected. The last Sith is dead, and deep down we all suspected it. The Force sensed it. And maybe, just maybe, that was the price." Yoda finally spoke. "Shadow he carries. Light too. His is a gray path. But in the end, war has found him." The council, still divided, allowed Anakin to continue serving, but under surveillance. He would receive no positions or honors, only the chance to redeem himself. "You are not our hero," said Windu, "but you may not yet be our enemy." Anakin didn't reply. He just turned his back and left the room, leaving behind a legacy of doubt, power, and danger. Time passed. With Palpatine dead and the Separatists dismantled, the galaxy was breathing. Anakin, now known as the Grey Jedi, wandered between systems extinguishing pockets of darkness, but never again submitted to any order. He was feared by some, revered by others, never fully accepted, but never abandoned. The Force had chosen an unusual path for him, and he followed it alone but free. Thus ends the journey of the chosen one who didn't want to be a master, the warrior who killed not for pride but for justice, and who nevertheless saved the galaxy. A legend forged in war, shaped by pain and defined by the choice to surrender neither to light nor darkness, only to himself.